Alright, so after that last game day and finding out the DSG world is just not gonna work at Bing, so be it. It's not the end of the world. It was a lot of fun while it lasted that one round. So, where we're at now is I've gotten the DMR, the Freedom Chicken sorted out. M140 finally bit the dust. Motor is just done, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what. It smells only slightly cooked, but it is a ferrite magnet setup. You can see just inside the can. So it's not a neomagnet motor. It may be salvageable with new magnets, but getting these ferrite magnets would be a pain in the rear. So that'll be an overtime transfer, just to see if that works or not. In the meantime, we're going to try out new ZCI 22 TPA. I think that stands for turns per armature, if I'm not mistaken. It allows it to generate higher torque, but the extra mass drops the total speed that can be produced by the output shaft. However, I've found that just running a high torque motor gives you plenty of RPS to turn the gear sets. So you don't have to wait for the RPS to spool up like a turbo. You always hear that on some guns where it goes, no, it's just straight. Yeah, okay, that was a fail. But anyway, you've seen the video. It was a pretty snappy 50 RPS out of this DSG, so I'm hoping to maintain that with this motor. So, first time trying out ZCI motors. First thing I notice is I don't get my threads like I do on my G&P motors, so I'm going to have to resolder the connections to be tabs again. Kind of a bummer, I can't swap it out. The notches for the alignment on the bucket is different. So, it is what it is. Get that soldered up. Other things we gotta swap out. I still have the Siegetek sector gear, and I have the right shims, so I just have to swap that out. Take out the M190, and then I'm gonna try out the M120 at first. It might only get me back to the 360 FPS I was at, and then later on I might try throwing in an M130 to try to get it more outdoor friendly, closer to 390. I'm gonna use this Prometheus POM piston after the last one. Well, technically our one didn't break, but I'm going to give it every chance it can to get a good seal. We're going with a mostly steel rack. This is by Lonex. Mostly polymer piston though. And it doesn't have that first tooth taken out. So I'll have to see how the engagement works with my gear set currently. I may have to washer it up. Find out when we open her up. So let's move stuff out of the way. In the meantime, we'll get this puppy cracked open. And as always, it's still a DSG, so it's going to be a pain to keep everything from exploding. Oh, and by the way, this guy here, this is the pinion that shredded out of Fish's Pit Viper. So what happened is the set screw for the bottom of the grip that adjusts the motor to engage, that set screw had vibrated loose and it backed off and shredded. Not fun. So we're going to do a new grip and grip motor plate like these G&Ps and see if that mounts onto his G&G combat machine. That should sort that out, because I threw a new motor in it and it was just fine. So actually I didn't even throw a new motor. All I did is I had a spare pinion gear from one of my other dead motors, and that salvaged that gun. Alright. Okay, everything out of the way. And just like as I said in the previous video, the key thing I don't want to happen is the trigger unit get destroyed by a massive spring detonation. So we'll go ahead and get the M190 out of here. Ah, there we go. Just look at the coils on that thing. It's just menacing. Okay, let's get tighten out there. Most annoying trigger in the world out of there. That tap plate, the spring is still just 3 coils snipped, but you'll notice I do have this tappet plate extremely cut short. I was doing that in the hopes to try to help out with the nozzle alignment issue. I didn't really see any change by snipping that any shorter. That's a stupid short fit now though. Alright, so this poor sucker is going to be decommissioned for a little while. As you can see, it's missing a lot of its teeth, just in the name of weight reduction. Although, to be honest, I had to be really careful with that because the heat was melting the piston. Everything else, though, you know, this is just taking a drill bit to the side. This is actually how it came stock, interestingly enough. Okay, I need to find everything that's stuck to this side of the gearbox. There we go. Oh, come on. And then as for this poor 8-tooth dual sector gear, we're just going to keep the shims with him, just like I did with the other gear. And we'll just save that for another day. If that day ever comes, I don't know. I've always wanted to try doing a 9-tooth instead of the 8-tooth. That way I can pull back the spring just a little extra. See if that helped me out any, but in the meantime, we're putting this good fella back in. Okay, so now we've got the 2 Siegetek gears and my bevel. Alright, let's put together a new piston. Oh, and a key detail on these pistons that you're looking for is if you see this pickup tooth is, if you will, recessed into the piston, it's not just a tooth sticking up, how it's part of the body. That's a big help on these polymer pistons. That way you can keep your lightweight without risking it shredding off under a heavier spring like an M130 and such. And then another point for pistons in general, a lot of people think, oh, I don't want anything to break period in my gun, so I'm going to make everything as robust as possible, go steel gears, all the steel rack pistons. But the trouble with going full steel rack pistons is you're making it a risk of stripping the gears rather than the piston. So say if you weren't running Siegetek gears, you were just running your stock G&G combat machine gears. If you're running a full steel rack, you're risking shredding the crappier steel gears rather than a cheap piston. Because if you shred your gears, then you're risking damage to the motor and the piston, and at the same time, you have to get a new gear set, reset the shimming, reset the motor height adjustment to the gears. It's a lot more involved to replace gears than it is to replace just the piston. So, general consensus online is you want your piston to be the fail point. So that's why having polymer teeth to be a wear point to let you know when it's worn down is rather, it's a common choice because no one likes replacing gear sets. All right. You see how this is a very fine thread on this screw? That's preferred on these piston heads. Classic Army started using coarse thread in their Nemesis line, and that was the death of the Classic Army gun that Luke had, or Spaz as you know him. Now this is pretty straightforward. Mount the piston head in the hole on the top of the piston, and now it's balancing act. You have the screw and the spring bearing all nice and balanced. Come on up, thread it in. And just keep in mind it is, aluminum on aluminum, so you don't want to over tighten this, but you don't want to be so loose that it can fall off during, rattling spring stuff. And if your O-ring is loose, that's on purpose. You actually want it to be overstretched. That way when the air goes through these ports, it blows the piston O-ring out against the cylinder walls. Gives you a good seal. So you don't necessarily want that to be tight inside your piston head. In my last visit to the Bing shop, Mike told me another tip that I've never run in this issue before, but I guess all y'all might want to keep an eye out for. If your piston cannot freely travel on its own in between the tracks whenever the gearbox is closed, and sorts the piston is too wide for your gearbox tracks, that will rob you of FPS. So you always want to test that the piston can freely move inside the gearbox shell before you go for full assembly. That way you know for sure that that's not a problem. Okay. Make sure we got the lube we need without clogging the ports. Because now we're going to be using the entirety of the cylinder. Might be a little bit overboard for the... Okay. Not overboard as in going overkill. I mean over-volumed for the cylinder length, inner barrel length that I'm using. Because it's only like a 280 to 300 millimeter barrel using the Phantom. It's a rather short gun. Well, I guess it's not too short, but it's only like a maybe like 9 3/4, 9.5 gun, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Seems to be working, as best as I can tell. And this is a Modify air nozzle I'm using, just as an FYI. Picked it up off the Bing shop. Also picked up a couple Bravo cylinder heads, but the cylinder head did not fit inside of my cylinder. So I'm going to stick to this. I'm pretty sure this is an SHS. No. I think this is the stock Thor gearbox cylinder head, I think. I think it's the stock box. I don't think I changed that one. I was thinking of Fish's DMR for a moment. Because spoilers, the raffle gun we won at the last Bing event in October, we're working on making a DMR, but we ran into some issues with gearbox alignment in the barrel, just like with the DSG. So I'm having Mike at Bing Shop give a second look at it, just to see what I missed, because clearly I did something wrong in both guns, and I'm hoping if he can find the issue in that gun, that I can solve the issue in this gun. Granted, if the issue persists after going back to single sector gear here. Alrighty. Oh, the universe lights is going to be a pain in the ass today. Pick up my pliers for a second there. Terminal bastard it is. Oh, right, I should put the screen first. Yep, see that? I don't know why, but in this gun particularly, everything does not want to stay in the gun. And I do mean everything. The reverse light doesn't want to stay in there, the trigger doesn't want to stay in there. Everybody's just a little bit too escape. Oh, that's another issue. Next one's that. Spring is not staying. Somehow bending itself underneath. Okay, noted. Let's see what you're up to, little spring. What's your metal flame? Not really out to a metal, but for this little bastard spring, you should do. It's caught in the act that time. From what I can see, under tension, he was trying to peel himself underneath the reversal latch. And that might have been my cause of some of my gearbox rotation I've been dealing with. When I was in DSG mode, I could hear on the field radio, go backwards a bit. I think the spring is coming off my reversal latch. It's just reversing. I'm trying to beat the point. So let's let that drop for a second here. And we're going to the 120. Again, these non-linear springs, their purpose is they gradually apply the load rather than immediately apply the load. It helps with the polymer pistons, so how they have that polymer pick up and steel teeth at the end. This allows the load to build up right before firing. Not really determine the difference, but I like to have the multi-coil around the spring guide. Just to have a little bit of direction behind the stroke. Oh, that's so easy to put in the big spring. See, I can hold it in with one finger. It's such a light day difference. It's not trying to kill me. The spring, the tendon, and reversal latch, all one paint. Get this out of the way. Make sure every pin's going in. Go. Oh, back to left. No bueno. That's also no bueno. Oh, Lordy. Oh, you got screwed up, didn't you? That close. You're kidding me. Oh, that's just rude. Aw, man. Get no love. Absolutely no love day. See the shit I put up with? I'll get back to you. Okay, we got it back together. Just takes a little bit of patience. Granted, not as much Piston as working with that thing. But I'll take it. I'll leave that out for now. I gotta change these connectors. So I'll get back to you on that. Alright, 1, 2, skip a few, and we're back to the tab design. I really hate those. Especially when I have such short wires. I really didn't want to splice any new wires on there and risk current getting super hot in there. Because if I do a shit solder job, it'll superheat. So, luckily I had just enough to get that on there. Took some plier finessing to get the angles I needed on the positive wire at least. Alright, anyway. It's a little low type of thing. Oh, wrong back. I feel like I need to back that off. Just in case. New motor. Yeah, that's super tight right now. There we go. As far as setting motor height goes, it's mostly by ear, but usually the best method is to go until you hit the pinion and bevel gear, and then back off a bit. And then after that you plug in a battery and listen to how it sounds, to be honest. But before I do that, I need to remember to put that in single sector gear mode, because it still thinks it's a DSG. That's kind of no bueno. Okay. Connected. No new updates. Alright. We're no longer a DSG. And I've got high torque gears in there. They're 20-to-1 ratio. And that's saved. No error codes from the day out. That's good to see. Everything went smoothly. Alright. Real complicated stuff there. Ooh, catching my desk on fire with that solder job. Oops. Not a very brilliant solder, but it works. Okay, so screwdriver. It's never gonna sound good, but this is the method. That is obnoxiously quiet. Holy crap. I mean, besides the bevel gear noise here. Hold on. Man, that could be beautiful. We'll find out. I don't think I've ever heard a gun shoot that quiet though, out of a gearbox. I'm just used to this now. Okay. So, from 6-inch. No silencer grab it. How's that tool? So no shot over there. I picked it up. There it is. Thanks, sir. Ooh. Still don't like how sticky that is. Can't much do about that. Alrighty. Get this stock on. Oh, by the way, while you are able to see it, do not recommend this. It's like 15-20 bucks at Home Depot. Yeah, it takes forever to heat up the element and solder. I mean, it gets the job done on simple stuff, but I'm not even able to change out Dean's connectors. We tried to do it once, and it just melted the plastic before it heated up the connectors hot enough to solder to. It was ridiculous. Can't wait to hear what this thing sounds like shooting down a barrel though, if it's that quiet. We'll put rounds down without anyone hearing me doing it. Should be stealthy. There we go. Alright, here's your results for having backed SSG on a ZCI motor using M120 spring and a Lonex piston and POM cylinder piston head combo. Oh, right, it can't read that, can it? 355, 351, 353, 356, 353, 355, 352, 353. So it's about that low 350s fairly consistently. And RPS. And again, this is that big old 2200 25C 11.1. About 20 RPS on this motor. See, it's snappy, just doesn't have the high RPS. So I'm finally being legal. You're welcome. I mean, honestly, it's still the quietest gun I've ever had. So that's going to be different. Anyway, that's your G&P Phantom back to SSG. Ready for Bing.